November the 27th of this year is when Martin Scorsese's gangster film The Irishman, starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, will hit Netflix's streaming platform. Some lucky people have managed to see the film or will see the film in cinemas, as Netflix are releasing the movie in a few theatres here and there, though it's just a limited release. I was one of the lucky people who managed to see the film, over a month before it hits Netflix. It was a terrific movie, a more somber and reflective gangster film than we usually get, and the talent on display was impeccable. I did a non-spoiler review of the film on my channel, if you want to check it out, and after the review I asked people to ask any questions they had about the film, and I would answer to the best of my ability. So let's take a look at some of the questions, and obviously if you have any yourself, feel free to mention them below, and I'll try to get to them in a future video. A word of warning, there are some minor spoilers in this video. So the first question here is, do you think Frank Sheeran killed Hoffa? Well, this is of course something hotly debated. There are many historians and experts who denounce the story and call Sheeran's testimony fiction, and there are those who buy it completely. I suppose we'll never fully know, but for what it's worth, at the very least, Frank Sheeran did know Hoffa. He was close to him, we do know this. And he was close to Russell Bufalino. He knew the name people close to Bufalino would call him. He knew the lingo of the mob. He was even one of the only non-Italians on the FBI's list of top mobsters in the US. So at the very least, some of the story is true. And for the sake of the film and the plot and the themes of the film, I buy it. I suppose I'm in the same boat as Scorsese. When a similar question was put to him, he essentially said, what difference does it make to our lives now, whether he did it or he didn't? It's pretty clear it was a mob hit, at the very least, and film directors always use their creative license to alter the details of historical events anyway. As Scorsese has mentioned, whether he did or didn't, as weird as it might sound, is not really relevant, because the film is concerned with morality and regret, and the assassination of Hoffa at the apparent hands of Sheeran is what the film uses as a template to deliver the themes Scorsese wanted to tackle. But to answer the question in short, I don't really have a reason not to believe Sheeran killed Hoffa. Charles Brandt, the author of the book I Heard You Paint Houses, which The Irishman is based off, did a lot of detailed research, and though he will of course have a vested interest in that he hit the jackpot with being able to interview a high-ranking mobster, but it's a credible story, and until some evidence completely contrary to the established story comes out, I've got no reason not to believe it. Another question here. Have you watched Joker and Once Upon a Time in America, and do you think The Irishman deserves to get an award for Best Picture? I have seen The Joker, yes. I reviewed it on my channel and I thought it was very good. I enjoyed it immensely. It channeled the films like Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy. I haven't seen Tarantino's film yet. I'll be looking to when it comes out on Blu-ray and DVD. Is The Irishman Best Picture material? Definitely. It's the best film I've seen all year, but admittedly I haven't seen much. And the only movie that can challenge it so far is Joker, but The Irishman is the superior film. It's Oscar season though, and there'll be a lot of movies coming out soon hoping to challenge for the big prize, but I think a Best Picture nomination is pretty much guaranteed for The Irishman. The pedigree of the talent involved is enough to give it one. Will it win? Who knows? The Oscars are weird. There's a lot of politics in it these days. Then you have the whole anti-Netflix stigma and other stuff. But Roma got the Best Picture nod, so you'd expect The Irishman to get one also. I can see it winning the big prize, but there will be competition. I imagine Tarantino's film will be nominated. Terrence Malick has a new film coming out this year. Rian Johnson's Knives Out is getting rave reviews. So too is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, The Lighthouse, and Ford vs Ferrari. I've got another question here about the dialogue and whether it is any good, and if there are long scenes of dialogue. Yeah, there is. Yeah, I mean, in fact, you could argue the entire film is simply conversations between people broken up by moments of violence. There are some funny lines and classic mob talk where simple sentences have hidden meanings, like when Pesci says, "You might be demonstrating a failure to show appreciation," which essentially means shut up or we'll kill you. Pacino and Stephen Graham have two entertaining scenes of heated dialogue. There's a wonderful exchange between Pacino and Pesci, and some great lines are scattered throughout the film. One notable one being an absolute savage line from Pacino that Hoffa really said in real life after the JFK assassination. A reporter or someone asked him what he would say regarding Robert Kennedy, who was JFK's brother and created the Get Hoffa squad. And Hoffa said, "He's just another lawyer now." Brutal. I'm getting a few questions about the music. Is the song Que Sera Sera used? No, it isn't, but I do remember it being in the original script, which is probably why the question was asked. Is Gimme Shelter played? No, it isn't. And in general, how is the music? I would say if you're going into the film expecting loads of rock and roll soundtracks accompanying trademark Scorsese montages, you're going to be disappointed. It's not that kind of movie. There are a few instances of classic Scorsese mob scenes where upbeat music is juxtaposed by beatdowns and cars blowing up and all that kind of stuff, but nothing on the level of Mean Streets, Goodfellas or Casino really. I don't actually remember a scene where I thought, wow, the music is really good here, you know. There isn't anything like, say, the House of the Rising Sun montage from Casino or the Gimme Shelter opening from The Departed. Little snippets here and there, yeah, but overall it's a quieter film. The movie actually makes good use of silence, in fact. A lot of scenes have no music, and in fact the most memorable music I remember from the film isn't even part of the soundtrack, but part of the actual original film score. There's a kind of little beat that plays every now and again during some of the more tense scenes. It kind of sounds like a mysterious little jingle from a 1960s detective film. I don't remember which exact songs are in the film. I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to music, but nothing too interesting I thought was in the movie. I do recall a song that was used in Shutter Island during a dream sequence. That's all I remember. Is there a scene where the four main actors are together, or at least all of them interact with each other? Well, in the book, there's a wonderful scene during Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night where Russell Bufalino, Frank Sheeran, Angelo Bruno and Jimmy Hoffa, those are the guys who the Big Four are playing, all sit at a table where they're sitting next to each other. It's almost like the scene was written for Scorsese. You can imagine a shot where all four are sitting side by side. But that isn't in the film. And to be honest, I think the movie is better off for it, because that would have been too self-conscious. It would have taken away from the characters in the story and put the emphasis on the actors. The Irishman, despite the incredible cast, is not self-conscious when it comes to the actors. It just gets on with it. That being said, every one of the Big Four actors shares at least one scene with each other. De Niro has a scene with everyone. Pesci, De Niro and Keitel have a meeting between the three. Pacino has one scene with Pesci and multiple with De Niro. And there's one brief meeting between Pacino and Keitel, almost as if Scorsese was thinking the same thing as us and wanted to make sure there was at least one scene between everyone. All of them though, in fact almost the entire cast including Stephen Graham, Ray Romano, Bobby Cannavale, Dominic Lombardozzi and others are all at Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night, so essentially everyone is in the same scene, just not together. Pacino and De Niro, for example, are sitting on the stage. Pesci is at one table with Lombardozzi and Graham, and Keitel is at another. But yes, all four interact with each other at some point, which is amazing and I'm sure ticks off a bucket list for mob movie fans everywhere. Were the World War II scenes very long? No, they're very short. There's only one flashback, and a snippet of it is shown in the trailer. De Niro forces two German soldiers to dig graves and then shoots them. He wonders why they go along with it, thinking that maybe they think he will show them mercy. It would have been great to get an extended flashback where Sheeran was in the trenches in Anzio and all the horrific stuff that was happening. We didn't get it, but it's good that at least there was one flashback because World War II was crucial in shaping Frank Sheeran into becoming a stone cold killer. Having something that references it was definitely necessary. Does the ring show off its beauty like in the trailer? You mean the ring that Pesci gave to De Niro? Is it beautiful, do you mean? Well, I mean, yeah, it's good looking. Do you mean whether the ring's beauty is prominent throughout? Well, you don't notice it all the time, obviously, what with, all that's going on with the story and the characters. Out of the three, who do you think will win an Oscar? That's an interesting question. All three are good in the movie. It's difficult to say. Then you have to factor in whether the de-aging CGI will count against the actors. If it doesn't, then I think it's quite possible that all three could get nominated. Highly unlikely, of course, but it has happened in the past. Even if the acting wasn't particularly remarkable, the three might get nominations anyway, simply because it might be the last big film the three will do. Certainly you expect this will be Joe Pesci's last film. Pesci was very subtle and carried a quiet power. It wasn't a showy performance, so it might get ignored by the Academy. Pacino gave us a classic Pacino performance. You'd expect his bravado acting would land a nomination for the legend. There's a lot of buzz surrounding his performance with the critics too. De Niro was incredible. He displayed such a range of emotions whilst remaining restrained and unemotive, as was the nature of his character. Again, providing they are not discounted because of the CGI, De Niro should definitely get a nomination for Best Actor. As for whether any of them would win, I can't say because I haven't seen enough from 2019. Joaquin Phoenix was very good in Joker, and he's overdue an Oscar, so would be solid competition for De Niro. Is The Irishman a good film or not? Yes. Yes, it is. Am I the only one who thinks Pesci would have made a better Hoffa and Pacino a better Buffalino? That's really interesting actually, because it's something I discussed in some videos before. Pesci is known for being, short and playing roles where he screams and launches profanity at everyone. He seems a perfect match for Jimmy Hoffa and even looks a bit like him. The same can be said for Pacino, who would have no doubt made an excellent Russell Buffalino in a kind of older Michael Corleone-esque role. I do think the two would have done a brilliant job playing each other's roles. And there is a part of me that wishes we did get to see what that would be like. But for what it's worth, Pacino is brilliant as Hoffa, and Pesci is sublime as Buffalino. Not to mention, the Buffalino role gives Pesci something new to do, as it's unlike his shouty roles, and from what I gather from interviews, it seems that's one of the reasons he accepted the role. Did you get the job in the end? Well, this is from where I said in my review that I started talking about The Irishman during a job interview. The interviewer took a look at my CV and saw that I was a film fan, and he asked me about that, and I asked him whether he liked gangster movies like Goodfellas, and he said yeah. So then I was like, well, have you heard of a new film coming out called The Irishman? And it just went on from there. And I just gave him the entire lowdown from there, and we ended up talking about the film for a while and about how I was one of the only people in the UK who would be able to see it in cinemas. I did get a call back for a second stage interview, so here's hoping. Maybe he just wants to find out what I thought of The Irishman. Here's another question. Is the Angelo Bruno hit in the film? No, it isn't. But the movie does something interesting, which is that when a new character is introduced, often there is a freeze frame and a few subtitles come up giving a brief explanation about how the character dies and when. And this happens for Bruno, but they don't actually show the hit. How many scenes are there with Keitel? Not a lot. He's in the film for very little. There was one scene where we first see him and he's introduced, then his main scene where he guns down De Niro for attempting to blow up one of his laundrettes. A great scene, by the way. And then he's sprinkled here and there throughout the movie, including Frank Sheeran Appreciation Night. About 3 or 4 scenes maybe in total, but only one proper one. But it was a real bonus, him being in the film, and he has a scene with all the 3 big names. Does the film contain a lot of profanity? No, not really. I mean, for an average film, yeah. But for a Scorsese film, no. There are numerous uses of the F word and other expletives, but nowhere near on the level of Casino and The Wolf of Wall Street. Most of it comes from Pacino, and he sure does love calling people cocksuckers in the film. How do you think Leonardo DiCaprio would have fit in this film? Rumour has it he was supposed to play RFK. Yeah, I heard about that rumour, but I think it would have been horribly distracting. Robert Kennedy is in the film for about 1 scene, so it would have been so weird for Leonardo DiCaprio to just randomly show up and then piss off, never to be seen again. Maybe if RFK had a more substantial role, but he doesn't. So is it a classic film in the gangster genre, and is it better than most other gangster films in the genre? It will definitely be held in the same conversation as the great gangster films. When you think of Goodfellas, Carlito's Way, Donnie Brasco, Scarface, all the big hitters of the genre, The Irishman will always be in the conversation. In fact, The Irishman will have a special reputation, seeing as though it is the swan song of the genre and of the actors' careers. Does the movie answer where Jimmy Hoffa is now? Yes, it does, but according to Sheeran's testimony, which is heavily contested. How was Stephen Graham playing Tony Pro? Graham was great. He held his own against the likes of Al Pacino and was very convincing as Tony Pro. I still deep down wish we got to see Frank Vincent as Tony Pro, but what with his death, Graham did a fine job, as he always does. And funnily enough, despite the fact that Pro is a character that you're supposed to hate, and hate him you do, Graham played him in such a way that weirdly I could see where his character was coming from, and why he acted the way he did in certain situations. But even still, Graham was awesome at playing assholes, and here is no exception. Do they sound young in the movie? Well, they pretty much sound like what they do in real life. Pacino has that gravelly voice, and Pesci's voice is pretty much the same as it's always been. He still sounds the same in real life. The voices weren't a problem in the slightest though. So I think that's about it. If you have any more questions about the movie or I've missed yours, feel free to let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.